Okay, you have to hear this. I was reading this discussion. And
Really?
yeah, it's just mind-blowing. It's all about women in leadership and how things might be different if, like if
Mm.
if historically women had held more power. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's from this Swedish platform called Stuket.nu.
Oh, I know. Stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have super interesting discussions on it.
Yeah, they really do. They dive into all sorts of like these critical social issues. It's really cool.
I'll have to check it out.
You should. It's Stokigt.nu. Anyway, so this particular one,
Yeah.
it's a conversation between like this guy, Mike, and an AI.
Okay.
And they're exploring like all these ideas about women, like historically being oppressed and, what might change if things were different, right?
Yeah.
And like right off the bat, Mike just lays out his frustration. He's like, how do we even change this historical oppression? Like that's his question.
I mean, yeah.
Where
do you even begin with that? A huge question.
Yeah, it's huge, right? It's like centuries of like systemic inequality.
Exactly.
And like one thing that really hit him was learning about marital rape.
Right.
Like that it was legal in Sweden until 1991.
Seriously.
1991.
That's crazy. I mean,
It wasn't that long ago.
yeah, it's really not that long ago.
It's mind-blowing, right?
Yeah. And it just kind of shows you how recently, like, women have gained,
Basic rights.
basic rights.
That we, kind of take for granted now,
Like, for so long,
Yeah,
women were basically seen as poverty
totally.
with very little control over,
Yeah.
over their bodies, their
Their
finances.
lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even their right to vote.
Exactly. It's like these weren't just like isolated incidents, you know what I mean? It was
Yeah.
like baked into the system.
Woven into the fabric of society.
Yeah, exactly. And so it makes you wonder, right?
Yeah.
Like how did that impact the way we view leadership?
Oh, interesting.
If for centuries power was mainly held by men, then did that shape our very definition of what a good leader should be?
Like what we expect from a leader.
Yeah, exactly. And it ties into something else that Mike brought up.
Oh, what's that?
He was talking about how society often labels people who are like empathetic and caring as mentally ill.
Whoa.
It's a really interesting point.
It is.
Yeah.
Because if the very things
If the very
that
thing,
we associate with compassion.
with being a good person,
Yeah, right?
are like pathologized,
Mm-hmm.
then what does that say about our values?
What are we valuing? It makes you think.
It really does.
And it also raises questions about,
Yeah.
how we even define like health and normal.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, like what's considered normal?
Yeah.
It's really fascinating.
It isn't. And maybe even more important,
Yeah.
if we're subconsciously devaluing empathy, then
Then are we also overlooking
yeah,
its role in leadership?
exactly. Like, could that be part of the problem?
It's possible. And this is where it starts to get really interesting.
Okay, I'm listening.
Because the discussion then goes into research suggesting that societies with more women in leadership are statistically more peaceful.
Wow. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, that's
That's
pretty amazing.
It's like, is this too good to be true? You know what I mean?
I mean, it sounds almost too good to be true.
Right. But they actually cite like
Yeah.
this Georgetown University
It's-
Women, Peace, and Security Index
wow.
from 2021.
Okay.
And they found that countries with more women leaders
Yeah.
are less likely to engage in armed conflict.
Interesting.
Right.
So less war.
Less war.
Exactly.
Less violence.
Less violence.
Interesting.
Isn't that wild?
It is pretty wild. Like, why would that be, though?
Right. That's the question.
Is it just that women are inherently less aggressive?
Yeah. Is it that simple?
I don't think it's that simple. You don't think so?
No.
Oh.
It's not really about like inherent qualities.
Right.
It's more about like statistical trends.
Okay, so like trends in how they lead.
Yes. Exactly. Like research has shown that women on average tend to use like a more collaborative decision-making process.
I see.
They're more likely to like get input from different people, prioritize building consensus,
Right.
and focus on long-term solutions.
I see. So it's not necessarily that
Yeah.
women are incapable of making
Right.
tough decisions.
Not at all.
It's that they might like approach those decisions
They might just approach them differently.
differently and consider like a wider range of
consequences.
consequences
Yeah.
and different factors.
Factors, exactly. And this isn't just like speculation either.
Right.
they actually cite studies, like there were studies published in the Harvard Business Review
Oh, wow.
that showed that women are, on average, less likely to engage in risky or unethical behavior.
That's interesting. Right. And they tend to prioritize
What do they prioritize?
transparency and accountability,
Oh, interesting.
which can, like, lead to better governance overall.
Yeah, better overall systems.
Exactly. So it's like, are there real-world examples of this?
That's a good question.
Right? Like, do we see a correlation between women in leadership
Yeah.
and lower levels of corruption in actual countries?
I wonder.
Right.
Well,
That's a good question.
actually, yeah. Look at Scandinavian countries.
Oh, yeah.
Like Sweden, Norway, Finland.
They're always ranked really high.
Yeah. They're consistently ranked as like the least corrupt
It's true.
globally.
And they also happen to have
They also have.
some of the highest levels of female representation in government.
It makes you wonder, right?
It really makes you wonder. It's like, okay, so less corruption.
Yeah.
Potentially less war.
Mm-hmm.
But are there other benefits?
Like what else?
You know what I mean?
Yeah, good question.
Besides, like, just keeping the peace.
Right.
Right.
Well, the discussion goes on to say
Yeah.
that there are a whole range of potential benefits,
Oh, wow.
and they extend beyond just like, conflict resolution.
Okay, so what kind of benefits are we talking about?
For example, research from the UN suggests that women leaders tend to place a greater emphasis on
Yeah.
social issues.
Like what? Like what kind of social issues?
Things like education,
Yeah.
healthcare, the environment.
Interesting. Why would those areas be, like, particularly important to them?
That's a good question.
Is it just because they're women?
It's probably more nuanced than that.
Yeah.
I think research suggests it's like a combination of factors,
Okay. Like what kind of factors?
including like their lived experiences
Okay.
and the roles they play
Mm-hmm.
within their families and communities.
I see.
For example,
Mm.
women are often the primary caregivers, right?
Yeah. Often.
For children
Mm-hmm.
and for elderly family members.
That's true. So they have a unique perspective on...
Right. And that gives them
a unique
perspective on like the importance of
Yeah.
social safety nets.
Social safety nets. Exactly.
So maybe that plays a role.
It's like they're bringing a different set of priorities
A different set of priorities.
to the table.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And ones that maybe
Ones that often get overlooked
yeah,
in more male-dominated
more male-dominated systems. Yeah.
Exactly. And these priorities, like, they can have real impact.
Yeah.
Think about leaders like Ellen Johnson Sirleaf,
Oh,
the first female president of Liberia.
incredible.
She prioritized, like, education and healthcare during her time in office.
Leading the nation through
Yeah.
post-war recovery.
Exactly.
Wow.
Or Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand,
Oh, yeah.
who, like, received international acclaim for her handling of
Yeah, she was a
the Christchurch mosque shootings and the COVID-19 pandemic.
It's true.
Right.
Yeah.
And her approach was, like, so widely praised
I remember.
for its empathy and focus on, like, the well-being
Yeah.
of all citizens.
It was like she brought a whole new
Yeah, it's like she
dimension to leadership.
brought a whole new dimension to what leadership could be.
It's true.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not just, like, anecdotal evidence. There was a study by McKinsey and Company that found that companies with more women in leadership positions tend to invest more in social and environmental initiatives.
Wow. So it's not just about
It's not just about being nice.
being nice or caring.
It's like a deeper
It's more about
commitment to sustainability, to ethical practices,
to the well-being
to the well-being of all stakeholders.
of everyone involved.
It seems like these, like, softer qualities are
Yeah.
actually pretty crucial
They may be the most important.
for effective leadership.
That's a great point.
Right.
And it goes back to that initial question that Mike was asking.
If we're devaluing empathy, are we also overlooking its potential
Right.
in leadership?
Yeah, like maybe we are.
It really makes me rethink, like, what we value in leaders.
Yeah. What do we really value?
It's not just about strength or dominance.
Right. Maybe it's more about
But empathy, collaboration.
a genuine concern for
Yeah, like actually caring the well-being of others, about people.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
It is, right.
Yeah.
And when it comes to like conflict resolution, the data is particularly
Okay.
compelling.
What does it say?
Research from the Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace and Security suggests that societies with more women in leadership are more likely to prioritize
prior to that
diplomacy and negotiation over military solutions.
Oh, so less likely
to go to war.
Resort to violence?
Wow. Interesting.
Right. Which makes sense considering what we were just talking about.
Right.
With,
their leadership style.
Their leadership style.
Yeah.
Right.
But are there like concrete examples of this?
Right. Like, do we see it happening on a global scale?
Yeah. Good question.
Right. They actually mention
They do.
UN Resolution 1325.
Okay.
Adopted in 2000.
Okay. I vaguely remember that.
Yeah. Have you heard of it?
Vaguely. Yeah.
Refresh my memory. What is it all about?
Well, it specifically highlights like the importance of women's participation in peace building and conflict resolution.
Interesting.
And it wasn't just like a symbolic gesture.
Right.
It was actually backed by research.
Oh, wow.
Showing that peace agreements where women were involved were 35% more likely to last for at least 15 years.
Seriously?
Yeah, that's according to a UN study.
That's incredible. 35% more likely to last for 15 years. That's huge. It really underscores the importance of making sure
that
women have a seat at the table.
Right, like when it comes to war and peace.
War and peace.
We need women's voices.
Well, we need their voices. We need their perspectives.
Their experiences.
It's not just about having a seat at the table. It's about
it's about their voices being heard.
Having their voices heard.
Their perspectives taken seriously.
And considered their lived experiences and
their unique approaches.
Yeah, their unique approaches to
problem solving.
Problem solving can lead to
more sustainable and equitable outcomes for everyone.
This all paints like a pretty compelling picture in favor of
increased female leadership.
But we also need to acknowledge that despite all this research and this inspiring potential, women are still vastly underrepresented in positions of power globally.
It's the unfortunate truth.
Right. It's like we're talking about all this amazing potential, all the ways that a more balanced approach.
To leadership
could benefit society.
Yeah, it could benefit everyone.
And yet there are still these invisible barriers. Holding women back.
Holding women back.
It's like we're teasing ourselves with the possibility.
Yeah, it's almost like a tease.
Of a better future, and then reality comes crashing in.
And we see the reality of the situation.
So let's talk about these barriers.
Yeah, let's get into that.
What are they?
What's holding women back?
I mean, I'm sure some people would just say, well, maybe women aren't as interested in leadership.
Right. Like maybe they just don't want it.
They're not as ambitious.
They're not cut out for it.
Too emotional.
They're too busy with their families.
It's like, if only it were that simple.
Right. It's so much more complex than that.
It's about a complex web of systemic and cultural factors.
Systemic and cultural barriers.
Deeply ingrained biases.
Biases.
And often outright discrimination.
Discrimination?
All of those things.
It's not one simple answer.
Give me an example.
Okay.
Of what you mean.
Of how this plays out.
Yeah, how do these systemic factors actually play out in the real world?
Okay, so think about childcare.
Okay.
In many countries, affordable childcare is simply not accessible.
It's so expensive.
It's incredibly expensive.
And it's hard to find.
It can be really hard to find.
So this forces
it forces many women into
career breaks.
Career breaks, which then makes
it harder
to climb.
To climb the ladder.
The leadership ladder.
Yeah, even if they're
super talented and driven, ambitious. Yeah, it's just it's not a level playing field.
No, it's not a level playing field at all.
And I bet the gender pay gap plays a role too, right?
Oh, absolutely. The gender pay gap further disadvantages women
economically, which makes it harder to
right, it makes it harder to
accumulate wealth. Invest in their own businesses. Or even just have the financial security.
Right, just to have the basic security.
To pursue
leadership roles that might require
more
risk or sacrifice.
More risk, more sacrifice.
It's this vicious
disadvantage.
Women are paid less.
They're paid less.
Which limits their opportunities.
Which
perpetuates this idea
That they're not.
That they're not as capable as men.
As capable as...
Which justifies paying them less.
And then it just goes around and around.
How do we even break out of that?
Yeah, how do you break that cycle?
That's like the million-dollar question.
Well, I think breaking out of that cycle requires a multifaceted approach.
Like, what do you mean?
It's about addressing those systemic issues that we've talked about, like access to childcare, closing the pay gap.
Pay gap?
But it also requires tackling, like those deeply ingrained biases.
And biases.
That still view leadership as a primarily masculine
thing.
You mean those like unspoken assumptions about...
Yeah, those assumptions.
What makes a good leader?
Right. Those stereotypes.
Yeah.
That can be so subtle.
They're so subtle.
But so pervasive.
They're everywhere.
Think about how, from a young age, girls are encouraged...
to be nice.
To be nice.
Helpful.
Cooperative.
While
boys are encouraged to be assertive.
Competitive.
Take charge.
Their charge.
Yeah, it's like those messages...
Right. And those messages... They shape our expectations.
And they limit our possibilities.
Yes. Even before
we have a chance.
Before we even have a chance?
To, like, explore our full potential.
To see what we're capable of.
It's no wonder. Like, women are often hesitant
to put themselves forward.
For leadership roles.
It's not because they lack the...
Yeah, it's not about...
ability or the ambition.
Lack of ability.
It's because they've been conditioned to believe...
Right, they've been taught...
that those roles aren't...
that they're not...
for them.
That it's not for them.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's the solution?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Is it just a matter of waiting for things to, like...
to slowly change?
Slowly change on their own?
I don't know if patience is enough.
You don't think so?
I think it requires a conscious effort.
A conscious effort.
To challenge those biases.
To challenge the bias, both individually and collectively.
So both on a personal level and on a societal level.
Exactly.
It's about speaking up when we see those stereotypes. Like
yes, speak up.
Being perpetuated.
Mentoring and supporting women in leadership roles.
Yes, give them the support they need.
And advocating for policies that
promote
gender equality.
Gender equality, exactly.
This sounds like a massive undertaking.
It is a big task.
Like, where do we even begin?
It can feel overwhelming.
It can.
But remember, even small actions can have a ripple effect.
Oh, I like that.
Right.
It's like, just
start somewhere.
Start somewhere.
Be aware of your own biases.
Call them out.
Yeah, call them out when you see them.
Support organizations that are...
Support organizations working towards
gender equality.
Yeah.
Those are all steps in the right direction.
Exactly. Just do what you can.
Okay, so let's talk numbers for a second.
Okay, you mentioned earlier that women are vastly underrepresented.
Yeah, they're very underrepresented.
In leadership positions globally.
Globally, yeah.
Just how bad is it?
Like, how bad are the numbers?
Yeah, remind me.
Okay, well, the numbers are pretty sobering.
Okay.
Remember, women make up only 26%.
26%.
26% of the world's parliamentarians.
That's it.
That's it.
And when it comes to heads of state?
Heads of state, a mere 10%.
10%. That's just...
It's shocking, isn't it?
Depressing. It's like all that potential we were discussing, all those positive impacts women could have.
There's like...
They're being stifled.
Yes, stifled. By these systemic barriers.
By all these barriers we talked about.
It's like, ugh.
Yeah, it's disheartening.
It's disheartening, but it's also... a call to action.
A call to action.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
The more we understand the scope...
understand how big the problem is.
Of the problem.
Yeah.
The more motivated we are to, like...
to find solutions.
Right. To actually do something about it.
You know, as we're talking about this, I'm reminded of something else Mike brought up.
Oh, what's that?
He was talking about how even when women... do manage to, like, break through those barriers. And reach leadership positions.
Yeah.
They often face different set of challenges.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right.
Like, even when they get there.
Right. Even when they get there.
They still have to face more obstacles.
It's like,
they're not done
yet.
There's more to overcome.
Right. There's this phenomenon called the double bind.
The double bind? What's that?
That women leaders often face.
The double bind. Yeah, it's like...
What does that mean?
It means they're kind of damned if they do and damned if they don't.
Okay, so explain that.
So, like, if a woman leader is assertive and decisive,
Like taking charge.
Yeah, exactly.
Making tough decisions.
They're often labeled as bossy or aggressive.
Yeah. Oh, I've heard that.
Right. But if a man does the same thing, he's praised for being a strong leader.
Ugh. The double standard.
It's a classic double standard.
Yeah, it's so unfair.
Totally unfair.
But then on the other hand...
Right, but then if she's
more collaborative,
empathetic,
yeah.
She's seen as weak or indecisive.
Oh, so she can't win.
Right. It reinforces the stereotype
that women
aren't cut out for leadership.
Oh, it's like they can't win.
They can't win. It's a no-win situation.
It's like they're constantly having to
prove
themselves, walk this tightrope between being too much and not enough. And that's got to be...
It's got to be exhausting.
Exhausting.
It takes so much energy and resilience.
Yeah, to navigate those double standards.
Exactly. It's not easy.
So what can we do about it? I mean, is it just up to women to figure out how to navigate these double binds?
I don't think so.
You don't.
It's not just on women to fix this.
Oh.
It's a societal problem.
It is, yeah.
It requires a societal solution.
We all need to.
We all need
to. Be part of the solution.
Be part of the solution.
Right.
We need to start challenging those double standards.
Those double standards.
Both consciously and unconsciously. So both, the things we're aware of and the things that are just
they're just kind of below the surface.
Yeah.
Imagine you're in a meeting, right?
Yeah.
And a woman expresses a strong opinion or challenges someone's idea.
Yeah.
Instead of immediately dismissing her
as aggressive.
Right. Take a moment to consider what she's actually saying.
What she's saying.
Is she making valid points? Is she bringing valuable insights?
So, judge her in
the
merits of her ideas.
Not on her
tone, her
demeanor.
Right.
Exactly. And the same goes for when women are being
collaborative
and empathetic. Instead of seeing those as weaknesses, let's
start seeing them as
recognizing them
as strengths.
Right. That's a really good point. Maybe instead of focusing on whether someone's acting like a leader, we should be asking,
are they
leading effectively? And if the answer is yes, then maybe the style doesn't matter as much as
we think it does.
Right. Exactly. It's about focusing on outcomes,
not
outdated
stereotypes about how a leader should look or act.
Okay, so we've talked about the systemic barriers, the deeply ingrained biases, the double binds that women leaders,
that they face.
It's a lot.
It's a lot to process,
to unpack, and it can feel pretty
overwhelming. What can we do?
Right. It can be easy to
to get bogged down
in the
negativity.
To feel like we're fighting an uphill battle.
Against
centuries of
ingrained
inequalities. Yeah.
So how do we avoid
getting discouraged?
Where do we find hope?
Yeah, where's the hope in all of this?
Well, I thought the source we're discussing ends on a really poignant and inspiring note.
Oh, good.
It's a tribute to a woman named Birgitta Dahl.
Birgitta Dahl. I'm not familiar.
You haven't heard of her?
With her work.
Okay, well, tell me about her.
What made her so inspiring?
Well, she was a prominent Swedish
advocate for
gender equality.
Okay.
Who recently passed away.
Oh, I see.
But she had a remarkable career in Swedish politics.
Wow, okay.
She served as Speaker of Parliament.
Yeah.
And was just a fierce champion for women's rights, climate action, children's rights.
So really,
she really embodies
the kind of leadership we've been talking about.
The kind of leadership we've been discussing, yeah.
Someone who prioritized collaboration, empathy, and a focus on
social well-being.
It sounds like she was
a true trailblazer.
Paving the way for,
for future generations
of women leaders.
And the source ends with this question.
They do. What is it?
will we see more leaders?
More leaders. Like Brigida.
Like Brigida. That's a good question.
It's a really good question. It's like, it shifts the focus.
It does, yeah.
From just admiring past achievements.
Yeah, not just looking back.
To asking,
what are we doing now?
What actions are we taking and now doubly?
Right, what are we doing to
create a better future?
To create a better future.
What are we doing to, like...
To dismantle
those barriers?
Those barriers and pave the way
for more women to...
More women.
Lead.
To lead. That's the question we'll be exploring.
That is the question. That's a good lead-in.
Yeah.
To the final part.
To the final part of our deep dive.
We've laid out the challenges.
We've talked about the challenge.
We've highlighted the potential.
Yeah.
And now it's time to ask.
Now it's time to ask, what can we do?
What can we actually do about it?
Individually and collectively, right?
As individuals and as a society.
To create a world...
A world where women have an equal...
opportunity.
To lead.
To lead and to make their...
mark on the world.
Mark on the world. You know, as we've been, exploring all these, facets of women in leadership, one thing that just keeps coming back to me is this.
What's that?
It's not just about changing laws or shattering glass ceilings.
Yeah, it's bigger than that.
It's about a deeper shift in our
mindset,
collective mindset.
Yeah, how we think about leadership in the first place.
Right. It's even if we have more women in parliament or leading Fortune 500 companies, if we're still clinging to these outdated ideas about what leadership should look like, we're kind of missing the point.
We're missing out on the benefits. Right?
Exactly. We're missing out on those very benefits.
The benefits of having
we're seeking
more women in leadership.
Those cultural norms we've talked about, the unspoken assumptions.
Those assumptions.
About what makes a good leader.
Right. They really shape our perceptions.
They do, yeah. They live
and limit possibilities.
What we think is possible.
It's almost like we're still
subconsciously
equating leadership with stereotypically masculine
traits. Give me an example.
Dominance, assertiveness, even a certain detachment.
A detachment from emotion.
And in doing so, we might be undervaluing the very qualities that research suggests are linked to.
Or actually linked to.
More effective than
ethical
leadership.
Interesting. What if?
Yeah, what if?
We started celebrating qualities like collaboration, empathy.
Empathy, okay.
Listening skills.
Yeah, being a good listener.
And the ability to build consensus.
Those are often seen as
They're seen as soft skills, right?
Soft skills, yeah.
But arguably, they're the very things
but maybe they're
that lead to the things that lead to
more sustainable
solutions.
Stronger teams.
And
a more harmonious society.
Right.
It makes you wonder if those soft skills are actually the
hardest ones to master. Especially in a world that often.
Yeah, especially in a world that rewards the opposite.
Right.
Being, cutthroat and ruthless.
Aggressive.
Yeah, aggressive.
It's we've got our priorities mixed up.
And it ties back to what Mike was saying, right?
Yeah.
About how if the most empathetic people are labeled as somehow deficient,
right,
then we've got our values.
Our values are messed up. Yeah.
Right.
We need to rethink what we're valuing.
It really makes you think about the messages.
The messages we're sending.
That we're sending to
young people.
To society.
Everyone as a whole.
Yeah. If empathy and collaboration are the keys to a more peaceful and just world.
A better world.
Then maybe we need to reevaluate how we perceive and value.
Yeah, how we see
those qualities.
Both
in individuals and in our leaders.
Exactly. Both in ourselves and in who we choose to lead us.
The research seems to be telling us that diversity, not just in terms of gender.
Right, not just gender.
But in thought, experience, and leadership styles.
Different ways of leading.
Is essential for tackling
the complex
challenges we face.
Challenges, yeah.
Clinging to these narrow, outdated definitions.
It's only holding us back.
That's
limiting our potential.
So after all of this, where do we go from here?
That's the big question, right? Where do we go from here?
What does this all mean for us, for me, listening to this.
For you, listening to this deep dive?
Yeah, what can I do?
Well, I think it starts with awareness.
Okay, awareness
of those implicit biases we all carry.
Oh, the biases that we don't even realize we have.
Right, the ones that are just kind of under the surface.
The ways we might be unconsciously.
Yeah, unconsciously.
Perpetuating those limiting narratives.
Those narratives about
gender and leadership. Like, give me an example. What do you mean?
Like, catch yourself when you make assumptions about
who's cut out for leadership.
Right, based on
those
outdated stereotypes.
Outdated stereotypes.
Yeah,
we're challenging those narratives when we see them.
Yeah, when you see them playing out.
In our workplaces.
In your workplace.
Our communities, even our families.
Yeah, and your own family.
Right.
Don't be afraid to speak up.
It's not just about pointing fingers.
Right, it's not about blaming.
It's about being willing to,
to have those
sometimes uncomfortable conversations.
Uncomfortable conversations, yeah.
To learn and grow.
To learn to grow and
to advocate.
To advocate for change.
For change where we can.
Where you can.
And this isn't just like a women's issue.
Right, this is not just about women.
The kind of leadership we have.
The values it embodies.
The values that our leaders embody.
Shapes the world we all live in.
It affects all of us.
Men and women.
Men, women, everyone.
Alike.
Yeah.
It seems like the research is pointing towards
a more balanced,
equitable approach to leadership. Benefiting everyone.
Benefiting everyone.
Leading to more peaceful
and
prosperous societies.
A better world for everyone.
Which brings us full circle.
Back to
that initial question.
That big question.
Does more female leadership,
more women in leadership,
equal a more peaceful world?
Yeah. Does it?
The $1 million question.
It is a big question.
And, while there are no easy answers or guarantees.
They're all easy answers, no.
The evidence we've discussed today.
The evidence we've looked at seems to point to
resounding.
Potentially, yes. And maybe even more importantly, this deep dive has
this conversation
challenged us to rethink
our very definition
of leadership. To move beyond those
outdated
stereotypes.
And embrace the qualities.
The qualities that
truly matter.
That really matter.
Empathy, collaboration.
Yeah.
A focus on
long-term
solutions. A genuine concern for
the well-being
of all.
Of all, yeah.
It's a vision.
It is
worth striving for.
We're striving for
a world where leadership is defined not by gender, but
by the qualities that lead to a more just,
equitable,
and thriving world for everyone.
For everyone, exactly.
I think we can all get behind that.
I think so too. And on that note of hope and possibility,
we wrap up our deep dive.
We do.
I encourage you
listening,
to continue exploring these ideas.
To
challenge assumptions.
And to advocate for change.
In
your own spheres.
Your own life.
Of influence.
Right.
Because the world we create
is
a reflection of
the choices we make.
The choices we make, both individually and
collectively. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
On this fascinating journey.
It's been a fascinating conversation.
Until next time. Keep those minds curious.
And
keep those conversations flowing.
Yes. Keep talking.
The more we question.
The more we learn.
And the more we learn.
The
closer we get to building a world. Worth inheriting.
Well said.
Knowledge is most powerful.
It is.
When it's shared, debated, and used to create
positive change.
Positive change, yes.
So let's keep the conversation going.
Let's keep talking. Let's keep learning.
Yeah.